Teachers of Reddit, whatever happened to the kids in your class that were scary smart? What's they ever make of themselves? Nobel laureate, incarcerated. One of the most brilliant undergraduate students I've ever had suddenly fell off the face of the earth midway through the second course he took with me, not even completing the final project. He didn't talk to me again, despite repeated emails and my efforts to help him turn his grade from an incomplete/F into the A he was on track to earn. A year and a half later, I happened to run into a young lady who looked uncannily like him on campus, and we exchanged a brief look of familiarity. On a hunch, I emailed one last time, expressing that I hoped he was doing well, and that there were no hard feelings, no matter what caused his absence. She replied that she had been struggling with her identity, had a bit of a breakdown that semester when she finally realized she wanted to transition, and was too embarrassed to reach out to me after the way she left things in class, and unsure of how her professors would take it. I tried to express that I was supportive of her as a student, no matter her gender identity, but we lost contact again after a few more emails, and I think she was still ashamed of dropping out. I think she's since moved to a different department. She's a brilliant student, and it bothers me to this day that her schooling was so impacted by her struggle to come out as trans, and by her fears of non-acceptance. I just hope that she's able to apply her mind to the fullest wherever she ends up, and that she gets the credit she deserves for it. The top scoring student in my graduating year went to university to study theoretical mathematics, suffered a mental/emotional breakdown, and returned to my high school to work as a gardener. It was, by all accounts, some real beautiful mind shit. He was found scribbling equations on the walls of the hallway outside his dorm room. Edit. Since this topic is getting popular, maybe I should ask, any Redditors here graduate high school in Canberra, 2003, and know the fellow I'm talking about? Not a teacher, but my brother's friend was a genius. Got a scholarship, was going to be a chemical engineer, then he was writing code for the synchrotron here in town. Then he was going to med school, then he ran out of scholarship because he couldn't decide what he wanted to do most. Now he owns a moving truck, and from what I hear he loves moving furniture. Edit. Since this thread is full of sadness, I will share stories of a few other very intelligent people I know that ended well. One of my girlfriends in elementary and high school was in advanced class with me. She won the math award by scoring the highest in the country on our standardized test. Her family was super religious and wanted her married and pregnant ASAP, so didn't let her go to university. She married a great guy, had some beautiful kids, and just finished school for being a nurse. Perfect for her as she is an extremely sweet and caring person. Also, my adopted cousin was very intelligent, partied all the time, and made the dean's list every year. He ended up getting his degree in computer science and commerce, and had his master's paid for by the company that cherry-picked him. Last I heard he was making $260,000 a year right out of the gate after another company had a bidding war with his over him. Whatever your choice in life, your happiness is really all that matters. Quite a few became university dropouts. I've noticed a pattern. Those kids who dropped out, they were the kids who were very intelligent, but lacked work ethic. Kids, you can't coast on your smarts in university. The few who were scary smart and were driven usually became very successful. Some programmers, some engineers, some lawyers, and politicians. One even went to Harvard, and last I heard he was doing really well. That was years ago though, don't know whatever happened to him. Also, some of them died. I had a teacher in high school, taught us history. Every now and then he'd tell a story of when he first started teaching. There was an insanely smart kid in his class. Just brilliant. Could do anything he wanted. Got accepted too often. Had some problems. Had to leave the school for a semester. No clue what happened to him. Until my teacher visited the Vietnam War Memorial in DC. The big black wall covered in names. That one. Found his former student. He said it was one of the saddest moments of his life. And even when he'd tell the story years later, he'd still tear up a bit over it. I do have a story about one particular kid who was gifted. Some Australians may remember this. My mum's friend went to school with a kid who was one of the smartest kids in the state. I don't know what subject he was so good at, but anyway, when he was about 17 she says he started to do a lot of drugs. It changed him. One night many years later, she had been keeping in touch with him a little bit over the years. He came over to her house unannounced. He was homeless, and he asked if he could have a shower. Being friends, she said okay, gave him a meal, and they talked for a few hours. Even though he was doing so poorly, he was able to maintain an intelligent conversation. About 2 months later, she heard about a man who had stabbed a police officer more than 24 times and fled the scene. It was him. He then led the police on a 3-week-long chase through the very dense bushland. The professional trackers who had been hired to help the police said they had never seen a man able to move through that area so quickly, even when they followed a trail, which he wasn't. After 3 weeks, he was recognized at a cafe drinking a coffee. When the police apprehended him, he did not run or protest. He was schizophrenic and had no idea what he had done. He didn't even know he was being chased for 3 weeks. I've read a lot of these comments that say I was a smart kid. Now I read it in my mom's basement all day. And I've come to a conclusion. The American educational system caters to the bottom/middle of the road student. Higher level students are not challenged enough. High school is easy for them, and they are able to just coast by on memory alone. Then, they get out into the real world and have no work ethic. I know this holds true for me. And the saddest part is that I'm a teacher, and I find myself often teaching to the middle of the road. Depends what you consider to be smart. The dumbest guy I have ever met, a contemporary with next to no people skills, had a double first from Cambridge. He is now, and has been for a long time, a college professor. Guy I was mates with in school. He left at 16 and went to be the T-boy at a local factory. He was just very good at getting on with people, watching and listening, and learning on the job. Very smart in this way. So he eventually ends up as a deputy manager, and then the company gets bought by a Russ corporation. American management liked him so much he is hired and transferred to their head office in Delaware, where he and his family have been now for some 20 years. He is R&D manager, gets paid handsomely, his kids are schooled well. He has a massive house with a pool, a few cars for the family, a boat, international travel, and an apparently happy marriage. All because he is smart enough to get on with people, and education never taught him that. As a parent, I worked with a classmate of my daughter in an after-school activity. Her friend was scary smart. In high school he taught himself app physics because it wasn't taught in their school. He graduated at the top of their class and was an all-around athlete in 4 sports. Anyway, he went away to school, full ride scholarship to Columbia, missed competing in sports, transferred to a school on the West Coast, finished his BA in science, is now teaching HS locally, and is the school's baseball head coach. That school and those students are so lucky. He is the nicest guy, and will do wonders to help his students. Autistic. I had an autistic boy in my class, who could, without paying any attention to what was going on, blurt out the answer to long division or 3-digit by 3-digit multiplication problems. He was bored with the curriculum in my room, and would lay his head on his desk and cover it with his math textbook. Then periodically he would yell out random answers in a perfect Pikachu voice to the problem the class was doing on the whiteboard. He was prone to small fits of violence, so while I dealt with them without too much inconvenience, once he went to the junior high school, they didn't, and he was placed in a private school which costs the district $45K/year. This was about 20 years ago. There was a kid I taught math to in 7th grade that I'm pretty sure was autistic to some degree, though he was usually just referred to among the faculty as off back then, but that was pretty standard for the times. He had an unusual tic, to put it lightly, of making this high-pitched grunt moan sound resembling a whale that could go on for up to a minute or so whenever he encountered a math problem he didn't know or was working out for the first time. It wasn't often I heard it, however, because he almost always knew the solutions to any problems I posted on the board instantaneously. He was like a freaky little foot-tapping, head-bobbing human calculator. Son of a bitch drove me crazy, because for every lesson I'd cover he'd be asking questions about collegiate level mathematics I couldn't always answer, without even realizing he was showing off. He honestly just thought it was a simple progression everyone else in the class would want to know about. Now, as you're probably guessing, this kid wasn't the coolest kid in school. For Valentine's Day he gave this girl a card with some sort of equation on it. I don't remember the details exactly, but I do remember it had something to do with infinity, as in the solution to how long he'd love her. At the end of the school year, on the last day of class, he stopped as he was walking out the door and looked at me and said, "Mr. Baby, I just wanted to let you know. Now, I'm preparing for this little sweet kid to tell me how much he appreciated all he'd learned this year. Maybe something about how I went the extra mile to challenge him." But instead he said, "I just wanted to let you know, you sneezed a total of 87 times in class this year," and walked out the door. I never really had any idea what would become of that kid. I hoped he'd do great things in some sort of computer science field perhaps. Well, about 7 years ago I walked into a McDonald's and my heart just about broke. There he was, standing behind the counter, asking what I'd like today. I made my order and reached for my wallet, but he just stood there staring at me with dead eyes without ever giving me the total. So I finally said, "What do you need?" He said, "About 350. Well, it was about this time I realized this kid was a 500-foot tall monster from the Paleolithic era. After 15 years of teaching, he was probably the most naturally gifted student I'd ever taught. I really wasn't shocked at all to see him doing so well. It's nice to stumble upon a past student and be shockingly surprised. I teach kindergarten, and I had a 4-year-old girl, late September day, come into my class that could read and comprehend at a 6th grade level. After the first month of school, she was assigned to a one-on-one tutor that was teaching her 5th grade learning material by Christmas. She stayed in her grade appropriate classes for social reasons. Now, instead of entering her freshman year of high school, she is taking independent study courses and training full-time to be an MMA fighter. In kindergarten I was reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone to the rest of the class, and by grade 4 I was reported to have a collegiate or above reading level. I was labeled gifted and was the English wonder kind. Now I'm about to enter university with acceptable but not spectacular grades, and I spend my spare time either in front of a screen in a dark room or smoking weed / doing prescription drugs. Woo-woo. I went to a school that had a pretty stellar gifted program, so I knew a half a dozen kids who were incredibly, scary smart. At a school for smart kids, these were the ones who made everyone else look like idiots. First off, all went on to Ivy League schools. 2 are politicians now, still small-time local stuff. One will be a senator someday, the other will likely never get past city stuff. He's very idealistic and won't associate with a party. He doesn't have enough money to have ideals, though. But I always vote for him when he comes up in an election either way. Another one just graduated medical school and is an intern, and another is a software engineer. The others are lost track of. Interesting point, none of them are lazy kids who sit around lamenting about how they could be something if they were only motivated to do so. In all honesty, I tend to get somewhat frustrated by people claiming to be unfulfilled geniuses because high school was very easy for them, but they went to college and didn't have the study skills or time management abilities to succeed. There are some legitimate cases where people do have breakdowns, but most of the time, people want to claim that they are victims to rationalize their own inadequacy. Actual geniuses, in many cases, breeze through high school because it's very easy, then get into a very good school, secure positions to build up their resume while in college, and tend not to be unemployed. TL. Doctor, most of you aren't geniuses. A lot of the smart kids at my high school went on to be very successful. We're all in our mid-20s now, and quite a few of the brainiacs are doctors. One kid that I was particularly close to moved to California to test robots, or something. That's all I can tell from his Facebook page. It's quite inspiring, because we came from the worst school in the city. Parents moved so their children didn't have to attend. We had barely any arts or sports funding, and our textbooks were from the 1960s. Fortunately, we had amazing teachers that pushed and supported us. I know the fate of 2 of the geniuses among my high school friends. One got a bachelor's and became a mortgage broker. Basically, he is just a regular guy with a family now. The other one had a much grimmer fate. He became a bus driver. While working, he got the shit severely beat out of him by 2 refugee immigrants, Mamu in Finnish. One of them was Muslim. What happened was, the guys were standing in front of the bus, so he told them to move. For that, they decided to kick his ass, and once he was down he received multiple kicks to the head. He got epilepsy from that, and is now on disability retirement. It caused quite a stir in the nationalist circles. I was the smart kid out of my classes. Even though I got F's, I was called smart. Honestly, I don't think I'm that smart at all. What the fuck is smart anyway? A smart person doesn't odd multiple times from multiple things. A smarty pants doesn't go through poly drug addictions. A smarty farty fuck doesn't try to kill themselves because they can't please everyone. There is no real smart, there is just gifted in certain areas. Fuck them for not telling my young self this and putting me on a fucking pedestal because I like to read and could remember half the shit I read. Fuck them for doing that to kids and praising their natural ability and not their hard work. Fuck them for creating a false sense of importance that will be crushed if you don't accept you're a part of the world with perks and downs. I know that teachers, admins, and everyone mean good, but fuck them for not realizing. I'm a music teacher. I had a student take up instrumental lessons in senior high school, quite late to begin learning as a school student. He blazed ahead and was on track to complete advanced level exams. He quit unexpectedly, murdered his mother, and then wrapped her in a blanket before skipping the country. As far as I know, he hasn't been found. It was strange thinking how many hours I spent alone in a room with him. Not sure about Scary Smart, but thick as pig shit went on to become a politician.